this is Elle from SpacetoCo. You're about to hear from Michael Abbott, who runs a community centre in the City of Charles Sturt in South Australia. Michael is speaking at one of our co-create sessions, which are a quarterly get-together of our community venue partners who use SpacetoCo to grow bookings and decrease admin. These are story-sharing sessions where our community share how they're using the platform and get feedback on new features that they need to do their jobs. In this session, Michael shares a lot of wisdom on how he balances the dual purpose of providing space and community programming. He shares how they were able to transition a complex set of spaces and regular hires to an automated system and the benefits that this has had on his team and the wider community, including a huge 300% growth in casual hire. He also shares his ideas for ways we can support other aspects of running a busy centre. So this is innovation and co-creation in action. If you run a community centre and want to get ideas for growing your impact in community, this is definitely worth a watch. Enjoy.
It's a great pleasure to invite Michael Abbott from the City of Charles Sturt and Maggie Lestrange from the City of Tea Tree Gully to chat to you all about their SpacetoCo experience. The idea here is we think that just by sort of sharing the experiences of how the platform's been used or any particular case studies or stories where things came up, that could be useful for everybody to hear about. So Michael, did you like to go first? And if you need to share your screen, just shout out and we can certainly give you the access to do that.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, SpacetoCo, for hosting this session. Yeah, I'm Michael, so I'm with the City of Charles Sturt, and I run 91 Green Community Centre. So yeah, so 91 Green. So we are a full service centre. Our principal activity is community development and community organisation. We have playgroups, we have a community shed, we have a rich arts and crafts program, we have a very progressive community in our area, so people are really interested in sustainability and environmental care. So we have a lot of local activities in that particular space. We run regular events and provide a lot of small services to the community, printing and business services. We have a computer lab and lots of other bits and pieces. So on any given day, half of what happens here is centre-led programming or community-led programming. And then we have a wealth of spaces which we've since listed on SpacetoCo to make available to the wider community. So I've currently got 6 spaces listed on the system. That includes our function room, our playroom, and a couple of meeting rooms. We probably have 9 spaces in all. Some of them aren't currently listed, and I'm working through a way of just listing them to help with data capture. And it's a wonderful community to work with. Yeah, very organised, very capable, highly mobilised. So they make good use of the centre, and it provides a very important service to the local area. For much of the reasons that SpacetoCo exists, we were having challenges around our kind of legacy business processes. You know, much like local government, lots of paper-based stuff, lots of duplication, lots of sort of unnecessary back and forth, lots of email exchanges. The hire process itself, which was a secondary service to the community, was a bit archaic. So the decision was made to streamline that. Went out to tender, and SpacetoCo put forward the best case, particularly around their improvement of the customer journey and their ability to improve access to the wider community. So we had a bit of a job ahead of us transitioning. Now I'm going to see if this is going to click through. Bear with me, folks. Yeah, so we had, I know SpacetoCo provides a service, and in future, if anyone is looking to migrate onto the platform, I'd say buy that service and get them to do all this, because it was a nightmare. We had 200 discrete user groups that we had to migrate from the historical arrangement they had. Some groups paying like $1 for a space for half a day. Some groups had never paid anything ever. Some people had been on legacy arrangements where a mayor had signed a document back in 1988 saying that they could use space indefinitely. So we took a very methodical change management process to assisting the groups onto the new system. About 80%, it was a fairly streamlined process. They were ready for the change. They saw the benefit in it. And we were able to sweeten a deal with some subsidies and reduced rates. And then we had 20% of groups who were either unwilling or unable. Either unwilling because the change was too much in the time frame that we had put aside, or unable due to digital limitations, financial limitations, or the group was at a point where they were going through a bit of an existential question of whether they should continue anyway. So there was a huge amount of work done to work alongside those groups, and we all kind of, it was with trepidation that the first billing cycle happened in the middle of August for the July period. We were curious about these kind of arrangements we'd set up with credit cards, groups that didn't have bank accounts who would support it through that process, groups who were given some financial assistance to help pay for space. And I think the record wasn't too bad. I think there was probably only one error of maybe 120 invoices, and that was at my centre of all places. So maybe one or two. So we were really happy with that, and we're really, really stoked that that was the first real win for our 6 staff members to have that body of work just entirely automated. You know, generating 120 invoices and calculating time and cost is no small thing. So so after the transition process, we've got a couple of months of data at 99 Green. I'm getting to a point where I can see kind of where things are at and where they were. And pre SpacetoCo, would have around 1,000 people a month come through the centre. Would have around 60 regular hire activities and around 40 centre-led activities, maybe 320 hours of use, and a income of around 2,500 to $3,000. And that's a lot of $5 rooms. That's a lot of $10 rooms. All the spaces we offer are heavily subsidised because we do consider space a service. So post SpacetoCo, based on the data from August, we saw a 40% increase in community contacts, so around 1,400 people. No change in our regular hire of 40 or centre-led activities, an increase in hours and an increase in income. So it was interesting where the impact had been, and that was really around the casual bookings. Historically, I guess we would curate the space. You know, we'd be very discerning about who we let use it and why. SpacetoCo just puts it out there, and then, you know, anyone who's looking for it, doing a Google search, obviously the SEO is very, very good because 99 Green's right there up top, and we get emails, phone calls, and requests on a daily basis. You know, at least 3, 4, 5 inquiries about space on a daily basis. So this increase was actually with a little bit of space management around it as well, turning spaces off because I couldn't kind of keep up with the inflow of new inquiries, messing around with hours, trying to see what was most efficient and most effective, looking at where the demand was. And it really was, casual bookings for private hires, birthday parties, engagement parties, bridal showers, all sorts of great and wonderful things that historically the centre probably wouldn't have traditionally just opened our doors to, but with the council's new direction of making the centres more accessible to the wider community, we now are. So that isn't without its challenges, and you know, this is the challenge I'll be putting back to SpacetoCo, is now that they've gone about generating all this new business for us, how they're going to help us manage it, because there's no additional resources within the centre itself for this 50% increase in people walking through the door. So it is a wonderful problem to have, and now, you know, some early conversations have started about the role that SpacetoCo as a system can help with centre management as well as booking and billing. So the challenge for me, you know, these are great results and everyone is really, really happy internally about it. No one's throwing new positions at me or giving me any additional resources. So while we're achieving the objective around access and income, I've got to maintain the balance as a full service community centre of how my time and how my volunteers' time is spent meeting the needs of the local community through our programming and development. And what would make that really easy if council turned around and said, well, you're a hall for hire and we'll leave it at that. That solves that problem. And it certainly in some of our other portfolios around halls and reserves, that is their principal objective, that they have capacity and they want to book out their space. I used the metaphor, I think, with Franco a couple of weeks ago, where a community centre is more like the family home trying to make a few bucks off the back room a couple of days a week, as opposed to the service apartment that's been purchased purely for the purposes of generating an income. So some of the future applications, which I'm hoping SpacetoCo, it does what it says on the box when it comes to booking, billing, streamlining business processes, and generating new inquiries and business. There's certainly no disputing that, and I'm assuming that's a shared experience with everyone. And it has been a pleasure to use a system that has made that aspect of my job infinitely easier than it was. So it's now, is the system capable of assisting me manage many other facets of my job as well? And that is things like volunteer management, property management, the centre's own program. So I've got a real interest in the manual booking functions, because at the moment that's where we put our own program through, and perhaps there's capacity within that function to help with program development or record keeping or participant information and things like that. We have the workflow and record keeping. We have alternative systems that sit outside council, and there's outside SpacetoCo. And I think the integration of that is something to look at in the future. And something that I'm big on is it's lovely to have all this rich data that comes through the system, and it's been amazing to see how our spaces have been optimized and where the opportunities are, and maybe where we could improve our photos to get more uptick in a particular corner of the centre that isn't currently used. But having a real-time data dashboard would be super helpful with daily management of the space as well. So that is probably about 5 minutes, Jeremy, which was my brief, and I said I'd stay on point. So if I can probably sum up, I wouldn't be lying if I said that it has transformed many aspects of our business. The tension that will always exist in a community centre is the demand for community development activities versus the demand for higher space. And you can make an argument that maybe over the Venn diagram, there's some shared space there as well, but based on the sort of demand that SpacetoCo is generating, these are people looking for a private space for private functions. So the net effect within the community is fairly limited. And so the opportunity to expand some of the functions within the system to help with centre management and community development activities would be wishful, but extremely helpful.
Michael, is absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We really appreciate it. And we have a belief at SpacetoCo that we lean into feedback, and you've said some really, really tangible, valuable things that will go away and incubate on, no doubt. The thing I loved the most, I think, was the point about just that growth you've had in bookings, the things that you didn't used to have coming through. And I can only imagine the flow-on effect that has to the community and the surrounding businesses around 19 on Green. I'm sure that while you get a lift, they get a lift as well. And that's another little intangible that we absolutely are keeping our eye on in the background as well, so that community development and economic development, because they're kind of trying to do the same thing, can also do well out of space sharing. That was fabulous. Thank you.